5.3 notes. Today we're going to determine if angle, side, angle, and angle, angle, side can be used for congruence shortcuts. And so the first one we're going to look at is angle, side, angle. So we have to start with this segment. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw a ray. And we're going to copy this segment onto our ray. So this segment is the same as this segment here. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to copy an angle on one side of my segment and an angle on the other side of my segment, because I know that the side has to be touching both angles. The angles have to be on both ends of that side. Are you with me? So when I go to construct this, I'm going to copy this angle. Just like we did the other day. I'm going to measure that arc. Measure this arc. And I did this so that this angle here matches this angle here. I'm also going to copy the other angle on the other side. I'm going to measure that arc. Going to measure this arc. And I now have copied this angle to match this angle. Now I may actually have to extend these rays so they create a triangle, because it looks like mine were not long enough. But this angle, this side, and this angle met at a point, and that made a unique triangle. And if you look at your neighbors around you, you should notice that your triangle looks pretty darn close, if not identical. Pretty darn close because of human error when we go to construct, but they should look pretty identical to the people around you. If you did your current constructions correctly, they should all look the same. Since there was only one triangle, one way to make this construction, the only other option is we could have flipped the angles, and then it would have just been a reflection of this. Okay? But either way, if you reflect something, isn't it an isometry? And it would still be congruent, right? So angle, side, angle, postulate, angle, side, angle. If two angles and the included side, included meaning the side in between them, of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So, if I have these two triangles here that are marked, I look at this and say, okay, cool, that has a side and two angles. So I need two A's and an S, but the S has to be between the two A's because it's touching both of them. So angle, side angle on that one. I look at this one and see it's labeled the same exact way. So another angle, side angle. And when I see that they're both labeled with the same shortcut, I can then say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. I have to double check though. A is a one arc, D is a one arc, B is a double arc, E is a double arc. So it's going to be DEF is how I have to name that second one. It's important that you're paying attention to how to name that second angle. All right, can I go ahead and flip this over? The next investigation, we actually are not going to do a construction for, because I'm going to see what else I can actually label on this. Okay. Looking at this, there is something you can label. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me what can I label and why? Go ahead, Griffin. Yeah, theorem. The third angle of the triangle theorem tells me that I can label this third angle congruent. Okay. That is a theorem that you're going to want to keep in your back pocket at all times, this unit. Third angle of a triangle theorem. So, now look at what's actually labeled here. Don't we have an angle, a side, and an angle just like we did in the last one? That's your shortcut that you have labeled. You can ignore this one, and we have angle, side, angle label. And so because of that, we know we have congruent triangles. So I know here that triangle ABC is congruent to DEF. Because I was able to label that third angle of a triangle, since I had angle, side, angle, I know I have congruent triangles. Okay? So if I'm only given angle, angle, side, every single time I could make those extra steps and use angle, side, angle, but now I know that no matter what, angle, angle, side, or side, angle, angle will always work. So if two angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two angles and a non-included side of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. And in our example here, I have labeled two angles and a side. Now the side only touches one of the angles. Do you see that? So I can either label it angle, angle, side, or side, angle, angle. It doesn't matter. But either way, I have the same shortcut on both because the side's only touching one of the angles, not both. It's not between them. It's on an end. Okay? And because that shortcut worked, I just did that investigation. We figured out that it's always going to work. So because of that, I can come up with a congruent statement. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. A was marked with one arc, D. B is marked with the double arc, E, and C is not marked, so F. Let's do these examples together. What else? Because not always are they going to give you 3 marks. You may have to look at this and say, can I label anything? I have to be able to state because in order to mark that label. So what can I label on number 1 here? Griffin, go ahead. I can mark the shared side. I can mark this side is congruent to itself. It's a shared side. Look at your left triangle. Do you have 3 things labeled? Let's see if it's one of the shortcuts that we know. Let's actually make a list of the shortcuts that we know. Raise your hand if you can give me one of the shortcuts that we know that work. Go ahead, Luke. Side angle side we know works. What else do we know works? Angle, angle side. So we know that it works if a side is on the end. Go ahead, Rich. The third angle of a triangle theorem is one of the things that we can use to mark stuff, but what's one of the shortcuts that we know? Like, we have the side, angle, side. There's 2 more that we've learned. We know a total of 4 so far. Go ahead, Stacy. Side, what was it? Side, 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 yep. Side, side, side will work. There's 1 more that we learned. Go ahead. Side, angle, angle, I'm going to write it right above this one because they're the exact same. With the S on the end, it doesn't matter which end you put it on. Go ahead. Angle, side, angle. So those are our 4 shortcuts. If we can label both of our triangles with the same shortcut, then we can mark them congruent to each other. Okay? So look at this left triangle. What shortcut is there? How many A's, how many S's do I have? 2 A's and an S. Is the S is the side between the 2 angles or on the end? On the end. So when I label this, I'm going to label it angle, angle with a side on the end. So far, so good? Now I'm going to look at this one. How can I label this one? How many angles? How many sides? 2 angles and a side. Is the side in between the 2 angles or is it on an end? It's on the end. So we have angle, angle, side again. Since they're labeled with the same shortcut, I can come up with a congruent statement. So I'm going to say that triangle QRT, I'll name the first one, name the second triangle. Let's practice that. You should have, I gotta unfreeze it. You should have triangle SRT there. Very good. Are we okay with that? What's our reason? What's our reason? What shortcut did we use? Angle, angle, side. So I would just write, like if it said Y, my reason is angle, angle, side. That's the shortcut you used. Okay. Number 2. Let's see what we can mark on this one. Raise your hand if you can tell me something that I can mark in this diagram. Go ahead, Ian. I don't think I have any vertical angles because I don't see any X's, like where 2 things cross. Here. So I don't think I have any vertical angles. Griffin? Alternate interior angles. Notice you have parallel lines. Here's a transversal on that parallel line. Remember, if you can draw a zigzag and highlight those parallel lines, you're going to highlight alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are congruent if we have the parallel lines. We do, so we're good to go and mark those congruent. So that's one thing we can mark. Adriana, did you have something else we can mark? It's the same thing. What's the one that I told you guys that you're going to definitely want to use? It's the easy one. Sometimes it's so obvious you forget to mark it. What else do we see here? Other than my two people I've called on all morning. Connor, what do you think? I have a shared side. So I can mark this side congruent to itself. Always mark that. Always look for it. It's in many, many problems. And it's one of those ones that it's so obvious you forget to mark it. You're looking for something harder. Mark the easy stuff though too. Okay? If I look at the triangle up top, do I have three things labeled? Right? I do? Okay. Drew, what do I have labeled there? How many angles? How many sides? Two of what? Two angles and how many sides? One side. Is the side touching both angles or just one? Just one. So I'm going to label this angle, angle with a side on the end. Let's look at this one. In this bottom triangle, Jaden, what do I have labeled? How many angles? How many sides? Two angles and one side. And so is the side in between the two angles or on the end? On the end. So when I label this, I'm going to label it angle, angle, side on the end. Are they labeled with the same shortcut? Yep. So let's name the top triangle first. So I'll name it LMO. So triangle LMO is congruent to triangle. Come up with the second name based on how I named the first one. So L has one arc, N has one arc. M on the top triangle has the double arc. O on the bottom triangle has the double arc. And then the last one is the O in the end. That looks good. Do we see why it has to be in that order? All right, let's look at number 3. Raise your hand if you can tell me something to label on number 3. Ian, go ahead. The vertical angles. What else can I label? Look up by number 3. What else could I label? M and T are congruent. Angle M and angle T are congruent. So sometimes they'll tell you they won't put the label on the diagram, but they'll tell you next to it. Make sure you read that and label what you need to. Okay? Cool, I already have 3 things labeled. Sam, how many angles, how many sides do I have here? 2 angles and a side. Is the side between the 2 angles or on the end? In between them. So I'm going to label it A with a S in between and another A. So far, so good? Houdini, what about this one? How many angles, how many sides? 2 angles and a side. Is the side between or on the end? Between. Angle, side, angle again. Had the same shortcut, so I can make a congruent statement. Triangle ARM is congruent to. Go ahead and write the second triangle in. Drew, how are you going to write that other triangle in? Triangle HRT. All right, let's double check. A has nothing, H has nothing. That looks good so far. R has one arc, R has one arc. That looks good. M has a double arc, T has a double arc. That looks good. So far, so good? All right, let's keep going then. Number 4. What else can I label on number 4? Go ahead, Faith. The shared side. I have to use a triple dash because I've already used a single and a double. Look at that. I already have 3 things labeled. What do you have labeled on this top triangle? How many sides? How many angles? 3 sides. Yes, Kyla. Oh, were you going to answer it? Yeah. Okay. So I have 3 sides. So side, side, side. Kyla, how many are on this one? 3 sides. So what do I label it? SSS. Can I use the side, side, side shortcut? I can. So because of that, I can come up with a triangle shortcut. Triangle BTH is congruent to triangle. Write that next triangle name. Lucas, what'd you get for that second triangle name?
Triangle ATH.
Let's check it out. ATH. B and A is where you start. You go to T, you go through the single dash both times. You go to H on both, you go through that triple dash. Looks good to me. Fine.